Hello and welcome to this week's first episode of the Watchdog. My name is Vuyam Voko, and on the show tonight,
there is absolutely no rationality on selling off an airline for 51 rand to people who are linked and controlled by the white capitalist establishment.
growing discontent over the sale of South African Airways. The EFF enters the fray. We look at the transaction the government has gone out of its way to keep secret. 2 days ahead of a major court case on the matter, we revisit the Save Free TV campaign and meet the official opposition's new youth leader. What drives the DA's next generation of leaders? All that and more coming up in tonight's episode of The Watchdog, which starts right now. EFF leader Julius Malema says government is taking South Africans for a ride with regard to the sale of South African Airways to Takatso Consortium. The party, he says, is going to do everything in its power to block the sale. Malema was addressing a media briefing earlier today following a meeting of the EFF's top brass.
There is absolutely no rationality on selling off an airline for 51 rand to people who are linked and controlled by the white capitalist establishment. We'll do everything in our power to reverse the sale of SAA because it is evident that the state-owned companies will first be made not to function well and thereafter given for free to the white capitalist establishment.
Well, joining us now is a distinguished professor of sustainable development at Stellenbosch University's School of Public Leadership, and that's Professor Mark Swirling. Prof, good evening. Thanks very much for your time.
Good evening.
Interesting. The EFF says it's going to instruct its lawyers to look into this whole transaction. Is there more to this deal than actually meets the eye from where you are sitting?
There's always a lot more to a deal than meets the eye, especially when it comes to state-owned enterprises. So I think this is not surprising at all, what is now being revealed in Parliament. The Minister for Public Enterprises has worked tirelessly for a very long time to save SAA, including twisting the arm of the Minister of Finance to provide the 10 billion funds to keep the airline going and to resolve the business rescue process. And we've also known for quite some time that Harris and this consortium are lining up to take over the airline. So it's not really surprising what is now emerged.
Well, I mean, the EFF, among other people, are obviously pushing a very different narrative. And it's interesting you say that the minister has been working tirelessly to save the airline. What makes you say that?
Well, I mean, he's made it clear that he is determined to make sure that the airline does not get closed down. So, he's made that very clear for quite some time. And although there were times when it looked like this was going to happen, I think it was very clear that he was making sure that he's going to fight for it. And the only way, given that the state doesn't have the funds to kind of bail out the national airline, the only way in which you can keep the airline going, if that's what you want, is to mobilize private sector capital and investment. The actually way to keep it going. The only other alternative would be to close it. And I hear what Julius Malema is saying, but how does he expect the state, under current circumstances, when there are much greater needs like energy crisis, water crisis, to put money into an airline on an ongoing basis?
Well, I mean, there are a lot of people who say they agree that it's a drain on the SAA is a drain on the fiscus, but at the same time, they find it ridiculous that I mean it would be sold for such an amount of money as the one that's being mentioned.
Well, I don't think the sale of the equity is the issue here. That's not the big deal. I mean, I really, the way these kinds of deals are structured, when you have a massive company losing absolutely billions of rands, there is no value in the company. So why pay more? What really matters is the cash that is required to keep it going. And if the reporting is clear, if we can take that at face value, the consortium is looking at, this private sector consortium is looking at a 3 billion rand investment. 10 billion has already been put in by the fiscus. There's a reference to another 3.5 billion from the fiscus in order to clean up the last remaining mess. And then that clears the way for this private sector consortium to put in 3 billion plus their expertise to kind of pull it into a viable operation once again.
Well, what some of the critics are saying is that if perhaps things were, this stuff was happening out there in the open, there could well be people out there who are prepared to, pay more or put more money than this particular consortium may be prepared to do. And because the whole thing is, shrouded in secrecy, it's what is making it, this whole thing, suspicious.
I certainly don't. I'm not surprised by what we've come across, and that's because it's been fairly clear for a good year or two now that the minister wanted to save South African Airways, that there was a commitment eventually, after quite a lot of delay on the part of Minister Mboweni, to help keep the airline going. And it also has been quite well known that there is a private sector consortium that was being put together. And a number of different private sector players were approached. And this particular one decided that here is an appropriate deal for them. But they have negotiated hard. The conditions are pretty tough. For the state, but the state doesn't have much option because they're on the back foot.
Well, remind us of those conditions, Prof.
Well, the conditions, for example, relating to from what the minister was saying in Parliament, is relating to dilution. So. What that means is, if additional capital is needed, and if the government can't follow the private sector consortium in matching what the private consortium put in, then the government component shareholding will diminish, which is what is called dilution. But it also is clear that the government has reserved for itself a golden position, which is that no matter how much it gets diluted down, it has control and has say over what happens to the airline. So the private sector consortium can't just on-sell it to whoever they want to make a profit.
Now, in Parliament last week, the minister said, and I quote, this was a live transaction and it's not final. What does that mean and why is that important? In other words, what advantages does it bring?
Well, this is a very, very complicated deal, and I would not be surprised if some of the more tricky conditions are still being worked out in greater detail. The private sector consortium is obviously reluctant, like any private consortium, to get involved, to take over a set of problems that could wreck the financial deal further down the line. So I think what they're doing is looking at it very closely. There are one or two expert opinions out there that are saying this is a bad deal, and the consortium is taking a massive risk. And so obviously that consortium is really trying to make sure that all the details are looked after. And what that basically means is their lawyers are engaging the lawyers of the state in order to finalize a whole bunch of clauses in the agreement, which are going to be pretty tough and tough negotiations to get the wording right so that nothing goes wrong in future. There was reference by the minister to provisions, for example, about what happens if the whole thing falls apart. And basically the state will be left holding the baby.
Now, I mean, there's this withdrawn email that has been referred to in terms of which the state may still provide funds in excess of its shareholding. Why would that be the case? What justification is there for something like that?
Well, I'm not sure of the details there, but one can read between the lines, which is essentially the private sector consortium wants to make sure that it's taking over an airline which it has control over, and there are no surprises. Now, what we do know is that while this process is being negotiated, a fairly inefficient airline is still running. And by the time that the private sector consortium takes over, they want to make sure that this is a clean deal, it's a clean operation, there are no skeletons in the cupboard, there are no surprises that are going to come up. And part of that is to negotiate quite hard, one can imagine, that the state puts in some additional funding. Exactly what that is, I'd be surprised if it's as much as 3.5 billion, which is what's been referred to. But, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if additional funding is required in order to keep an airline going with a private sector consortium operating it and putting in all the additional funds that are required to get it going, which is what the minister has said he wants to achieve. For better or for worse, you know, that's up to South Africa to judge, but that was his intention.
But I mean, is South Africa able to, you know, make a sober judgment on this, given the fact that Parliament, it would seem, is also none the wiser about what exactly is going on here? There are very few facts, you know, on which they can make an objective evaluation of what is going on here.
Yeah, it does seem like both Parliament and National Treasury are saying they're less aware of the details than they should be. Exactly, I'm not familiar enough with exactly what's been revealed to whom about what aspects of the deal. But if one goes at face value on the reports, it does seem that there has been insufficient consultation with National Treasury and Parliament. But as I say, I'm not familiar with the details. But I think what South Africa, Parliament, National Treasury should be asking is, firstly, do we want this airline to continue? Is it an important part of national pride and economic viability in terms of jobs and skills, etc.? And secondly, is it worth putting in additional funding from government over and above the 10 billion in order to achieve that, so that a private sector consortium keeps it going with funds that are not going to come from government?
Well, speaking of consultation, I mean, there was this, I think it was quoted in Bloomberg, if I'm not mistaken, where Treasury was saying, you know, they don't know what's going on here. They have not been consulted.
Well, I don't know whether they've been consulted or not, but if those reports are true, this may well be part of the delays that we know, that the minister says we can expect. This is not signed and sealed, and that may well be some of the process. Parliament has also made it clear that the transaction would result in a change in the South African Airways Act, which is what established the airline. So that would also need to change. And once Parliament gets going, there's consultative processes, there's all sorts of procedures, there's stakeholder involvement, etc., etc. So that's also going to delay things. So I think, you know, when the minister says this is not a done deal, he's basically saying there's a lot more time required to attend to these kinds of details that you are referring to, which in turn is going to cost money. The longer the deal takes, the longer it's going to take to mobilize the private sector investment into the airline, and the more it's going to cost the fiscus and ultimately the taxpayer until we get to that point. And we just need to ask, is it worth it? And the minister has said, yes, it is.
Okay, that's where we're going to leave it for tonight. Thanks very much, Prof, for your time this evening, Professor Mark Swilling, on that threat by the EFF that it's going to take this matter to court because it says the government is taking South Africans for a ride with regard to this sale of South African Airways to the Takatso Consortium. The party says it's going to do everything in its power to block the sale. Now, 2 days, I should say, ahead of a major court case on the matter, we revisit the Save Free TV campaign. That's our story next. Welcome back. The Save Free TV campaign has thrown its weight behind the ETV. The station is arguing that the analog switch off must be delayed until a sufficient number of so-called indigent TV households have had their government-supplied DTT decoders installed. We're now joined by Karen Thorne, who is the station manager of Cape Town TV, part of the Save TV Free TV campaign. Good evening, Karen, thanks very much for your time. So this matter is going to court in the next a couple of days. Why does this case matter to you and the entire Save Free TV campaign?
Look, I mean, I think there's two aspects to this, Vuyo. One is that the future of free-to-air television is really at stake in South Africa. And as I'm sure the viewers know, free-to-air television includes SABC as well as ETV, as well as the community broadcasters, which have all been licensed by ICASA to serve the public interest. That is our primary mandate, to provide access to information and fulfill certain public service obligations. And the manner in which the migration process has been handled by the government, unfortunately, means that when the analog signal is switched off at the end of June, millions of South Africans are going to be left without a TV signal. I think the problem with a lot of the communication that's been going around on this issue is it's only been focusing on the 1.5 million so-called indigent households, but we're trying to focus the public's attention on the real number, which is 5.7 million South Africans that I'm not talking about South Africans, I'm talking about households that are actually dependent on analog television, who are going to be affected by the switch off.
We are going to get into those numbers and why this is important. But first, just to underscore a point, you are not saying the switch off shouldn't happen, but you're saying it must be delayed.
Exactly. Of course, we all understand the switch off has to happen. It's just how it's done. But
it's being done for all the good reasons, which you also accept.
Of course. I mean, we accept that it's inevitable. We understand the benefits of digital television and the benefits that will have for the public. It's a much more efficient use of the frequency spectrum and will allow many more channels to be received by viewers. But yeah, as I said, it's really the way in which that it's been done that we're challenging, and we're also not for one moment saying that the auction of the frequency that gets freed up as a result of the switch off should not take place. We also are completely cognizant of the need for this frequency to be freed up for the sake of the country's economy and to further digital access.
How do you think they ought to have handled this?
Look, I think it's a very complicated process, but essentially the majority of South Africans receive their TV signal using the analog TV sets. So these TV sets are obviously not able to pick up a digital signal. And therefore, what needed to happen 15 years ago was that the government had to the government actually undertook to roll out 1.5 million set-top boxes to indigent households, who are people who were regarded as not being able to afford to go out and buy set-top boxes. However, anyone earning above 3,500 Rand a month were obviously expected to go out and buy set-top boxes or digital TV sets. And that's where the other bit of the problem comes in, is that there are no set-top boxes even available in retail. And unfortunately, the government also failed to ban the import of analog TV sets when they should have done so many, many years ago. So South Africa, as a result, has become a dumping ground of old technology. And so, there's most people out there, in fact, do not have digital TV sets with built-in tuners. And those that do exist on the market tend to be more on the high end. They're the more expensive TV sets. So we really are looking at that missing middle. Yes, obviously, the indigent households are key, and we doubt the government's ability to be able to even roll out those 1.5 million set-top boxes. But more importantly, we're worried about, what makes someone earning 4,000 Rand a month, able to go out and buy a set-top box if that set-top box isn't even available. We have been encouraged by some of the minister's latest utterances that she is now paying attention to the missing middle. She's now starting to talk about manufacturing more set-top boxes, ensuring that they are available in retail. She is talking about banning the import of analog TV sets, but unfortunately, it's too little, too late. So we really do have to find solutions, and fortunately, there are solutions, which we can talk about.
Well, the minister has also said that, there is no regulatory or legislative requirement on the government to, provide the assistance.
Look, that's just an excuse. I think it's not justifiable. The government was responsible from the outset to managing this process and ensuring the citizens' constitutional rights to access public broadcasting services or public interest broadcasting services. So one can nitpick about whether she was obligated, or not her, whether the government at the time when this all started out was obligated to provide these set-top boxes. For us, it's really a constitutional issue at this point. It's not a narrow sort of technocratic issue. It's really about serving the public interest and ensuring that South Africans continue to enjoy access to public interest television in South Africa.
So in a sense, you're saying the government is making the rest of us pay for what are essentially its own sins.
Well, it's essentially playing the blame game. The government has had, I can't remember, I think this started in 2006. So the government has had more than enough time to finalize this process and manufacture the set-top boxes and get them rolled out. But unfortunately, the previous administration, for whatever reason, botched the process. And I obviously also respect the idea that Minister Ntshavheni is trying to get things done. She's obviously got performance targets and wants to make progress in this area, as do we all. But the fact is that one can't neglect an important project like this for more than a decade and then suddenly decide in October last year that the analog switch off is going to take place in March without first appraising yourself of the impact that this is going to have on the viewers.
The other point that you make in the statement sent out earlier today is that pay TV platforms like your MultiChoice and OpenView are signing up thousands of new subscribers every day. Is there something inherently wrong with that?
Sorry, boy, I lost you for a moment there.
Okay, I was saying, I mean, in your statement, you point out that your multi-choices and your open views are signing up thousands of new subscribers
Sorry, boy, I think we've got a bad line. But
Okay.
I think I got your question. I think you're talking about multi-choice and
Open view.
the ETV's paid Open View
Yes.
signing up a lot of subscribers. Yes, I mean obviously that is happening, but we are concerned that this is also entrenching multi-choice's monopoly. I mean, as it is already, 50% of the population receive their television via multi-choice, and I think that that's not a healthy situation. It's not good for media diversity in South Africa, and I think that South Africans should be able to access their TV services for free and not have to pay TV platforms to access their television.
So you'll be there to support ETV, or are you planning to do something as well as the Save Free TV campaign, or are you just going to support this ETV application?
Sorry, Vuyo, I didn't get that question. I think
Okay.
the line is breaking up.
Yeah, I was saying, just for clarity, you are just supporting the ETV application, but you're not going to launch a separate application of your own as the Save Free
Sorry,
TV
I'm
campaign.
fine. Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to say that we're not just supporting ETV. I think the most important point is that we're supporting free-to-air television. So it's you know, free TV, as I said, is 3 tiers of television. It's ETV is licensed as a private free-to-air broadcaster to provide free-to-air television, as is the SABC, as are the 5 community TV stations that are operating around the country. So for us, it's not really just about ETV, it's actually about all free-to-air TV. But of course, we do support ETV's court case, because they're the ones that are going out there and fighting this battle.
Okay, that's all going to leave it. Thanks very much for your time this evening, Karen Thorne, who is the station manager of Cape Town TV. They are part of the Save Free TV campaign. They are, of course, looking forward to the upcoming Constitutional Court case, which involves ETV, and that case is set for the 20th of May. ETV want the switch off of analog TV broadcasting delayed for the reasons we have been talking about. Up next, meet the Democratic Alliance's new youth leader. Who is he and what is he up to? The Democratic Alliance Youth has a new leader. Nicholas Nyati was elected over the weekend, and he joins us now on the line from Gqeberha. Nicholas, good evening. Thanks very much for your time.
Good evening, Vuyo, to you and your viewers at home.
Tell us how was this process done? And I understand you are an interim leader, and why interim?
Thanks, Vuyo. Understanding the constitution of the Democratic Alliance Youth, a new leader is elected after every 3 years or through a Congress process. Now, our former leader, Mr. Honorable Luyolo Mpiti, has unfortunately reached the age of 31. So he no longer qualifies for the DA Youth. We had to go into a special Congress, which will elect an interim structure just to take us to the normal Congress, which will be next year with the mother body Congress.
Why wouldn't you just have bring the Congress forward?
Because we want to align it with the different auxiliaries of the party. Remember, the DA is going into its Congress, Dawn is going into its Congress. So we want to have all of our structures having a Congress at the same time, so that the leadership that serves at FedEx can all have the same term in office and start on the same term.
And so who then elected you? Who had to oversee that process?
It was a normal voting Congress. So it was delegates that elected me. Delegates are taken from the membership across the country. The only province that did not vote was Limpopo because it was still under administration. But I was elected by delegates from across South Africa, young people from across South Africa.
Did they tell you why they chose you?
I think young people listened to the vision that I offered, and they align themselves with that vision because they see hope and they think that their dreams can be realized through this vision that I presented for the interim structure.
Take us through that vision.
I had a 5-point plan. I said we are tired of poetry. We want pragmatic solutions to the challenges that we face. Young people have been crying for a voice, and I promised them that I'll be that voice. They believed me because they've seen me walk the talk. And my 5 steps, the first one is the fact that I'm just going to stand for the interim structure. Because I believe that if we want to make the youth work, we need a leader who's going to lead by example. How do you do that? By opening opportunities for others. So the first promise was that I'll just stand for the interim, I won't stand in the next Congress. The second one is to restructure our branches and rebuild branches across the country. This is important because if you want to build a home for South Africans, all South Africans, you need to have strong branches, you'll have strong constituencies, and you'll have strong provinces that will be able to attract not only Onikonlas, but Nicholas, Michaela, Peter, Michael, and build a home for all young South Africans. Then we can work together and address the challenges that young people in this country are facing.
What do you mean when you say young people are tired of poetry? Who's giving them poetry?
All politicians are giving young people poetry, especially the governing party. If you listen to the budget speech, if you listen to any presidential address, it's all about, we will create this, we will do this, we will build a South Africa for prosperous South Africa, but nothing is happening. 9.2 million young people are unemployed. What we want is plans. Tell us that I am going to ensure that there's permanent electricity supply. How am I going to do this? Number one, by opening independent power supplies, allowing people to provide electricity. 2, I'm going to ensure that there's permanent supply of water. What are the steps to do that? So the DA Youth wants to be that voice that speaks about practical solutions to the practical challenges that we face on a daily basis.
When you say all politicians give young people poetry, does that exclude the Democratic Alliance politicians?
All reports, all audit reports speak for themselves. If you look where the DA governs, we're the only party that actually gets things done. Lowest unemployment rate in the country, it's Western Cape. A young person has got better chances of, number one, getting better education, number 2, actually getting a job when they stay in the Western Cape compared to when they stay anywhere else in the country. Wherever the DA governs, wherever, you have a greater chance of opportunities. If you look across the country in terms of housing, in terms of electricity, in terms of water, wherever the DA governs, we're the only party that can actually supply this to South Africans. So when I speak about politicians who fail, they know who they are. And as the DA Youth, we're going to take the fight to them and ensure that we remove them in 2024 and remove them from all municipalities in 2026.
So all politicians except those from the DA give us poetry and nothing else.
All politicians except for those that get things done.
Does that exclude the Democratic Alliance politicians? Does that include?
It excludes
them.
It excludes them because we get things done for you. I mean, wherever you look, the only hope for South Africa is the Western Cape. We always hear when we are praying in Brighton Square, people say, hey, and that's because the DA, where they govern, they get things done. So I think in terms of pragmatism, you can see that the DA actually gets their foot on the ground and actually do some work.
And you think the youth of Nyanga, Khayelitsha, Gugulethu, they will agree with you?
I was in Gunya constituency. It caters with Ilanga. I was in Stellenbosch, where my deputy, you were the chairperson of the DA Youth stays, when the Pure Olai. I was there, not a long time ago, 2 days ago. I was in Cape Town. The youth there are saying that, Nick, the DA youth is our only hope, because here we are voting for the DA. And where Omama might have voted for another party, but Tina, as young people, we know that the DA is the only hope. These are people not just from Inyanga, Kwalanga, Ekayelicha. It's actually people who left West situations in the Eastern Cape and went to look for opportunities. Within a short period of time, they were able to at least get something. I'm not saying the Western Cape is perfect, but I'm saying in South Africa, in the context of South Africa, the only party that can take us out of this mess is the DA. And for the DA to do that, we need a strong DA youth that is going to be a home for all young South Africans. Young South Africans that are going to vote going into 2024, going into 2026, and remove the kleptocratic government of the day.
What is your understanding of why people like Herman Mashaba, people like Musi Maimane, Lindiwe, have left the DA? What is your understanding of why they could no longer identify with this party?
Politics in its nature is a contested terrain. It's a battle of ideas. It's a battle of approaches. And in a liberal party, that is times 100, because liberalism is all about different opinions and different ideas. Whenever I answer a person who asks me this question, I always say, the most important thing is to know your why. Why did I join the DA? Why did I join politics? And if you know that why, you will be able to withstand whatever debates or whatever challenges might arise. Now, to speak about Helen or your Herman or any other leader, I think it's only fair that we bring them and then they speak. But for me, honestly speaking, it will depend on their why. Why did they join politics? If you join politics because you wanted to change people's lives and you are thinking you are going to do it outside the DA, I don't know what you are basing your research on, because if you look at the context of South Africa, the DA is the only party. This is not me. It's there. It's research. It's facts that actually can save us from this mess. It's based on stats. It's based on unemployment states and the opportunities that we give people where we have them. So it's your why, Putvuyo. And I only think it's fair that we ask them. I'm still here.
No, I was asking for your opinion, what you think, are the reasons they left the party. These were some of, your Lindiwe Mazibukos, your Mbalintulis were some of the, most brilliant black leaders the Democratic Alliance has had. And as they themselves have said, it wasn't easy for them to just leave, something they believed in so strongly, but they felt they had to. So do you not think they had reasons? They had a case. You may disagree with them, but do you not think that the reasons they have put out there are valid?
The most brilliant leaders, Putvuyo, are our activists who are on the ground each and every day, getting us votes. Remember, it is not Nicholas who's a councillor. It is not John who's an MP, but it is the people who go door to door, house to house, and listen to the cries of South Africans that are the brilliant leaders, in my view. That's the first point. The second point, honestly speaking, I said it is your why. I can only have an opinion after I understand their why. When you look at me, when I joined politics because of the challenges that I saw in an institution of higher learning. And I said, I want to be part of addressing the challenges. I never thought it was going to be easy. It was difficult. But each and every day, when I think about giving up, there was a time in 2016 when I was physically assaulted. It was all over the media. I had an opportunity to say, it's difficult, I should quit, but I didn't, because my why kept me going. So I can only comment on this issue if I understand their why. And I don't think, for me, this is a major issue. People come and go. That's the nature of politics. It's a contested terrain. People come from all races, and I also don't like this narrative that it's black leaders. the DA is a party for all people. We have white people, we have colored people, we have black people. I don't hear anyone speaking about white people that leave, but we want to drive this narrative as if there's a black exodus. Nicholas is still here, still passionate about this party, and we're still passionate about building a South Africa for all.
Do you not think that they felt as assaulted as you once were, but perhaps emotionally? So in other words, they couldn't take the emotional abuse that they were getting from some of your leaders. What I'm trying to understand here is whether you are prepared to concede that your party is not a perfect party as you are making it to appear to be, that it has its own challenges that people like you or the next generation of leaders need to confront. To pretend that it's all hunky-dory, is not helpful. And that's really the point I'm trying to make here.
I think this is the poetry I was speaking about. When you go to a person, the only thing that they ask you is that, when will my house be built? When will my child get a job? When will I have electricity? Those are practical challenges that our people face. I'm not here to say the DA is a perfect party. I don't think there is a perfect party in the world. But I am saying the DA is the best party in South Africa, and no one can debate that. The DA is best when it comes to governance. No one can debate that. Why do people even vote? People vote because they want a party that is going to address their challenges. And the DA is the only party that can do that. But no one can dispute that. So now we have to speak about this poetic thing that Nicholas is black and he has left. No. I don't want to enter that debate. I'm saying let us do with pragmatic solutions to the pragmatic challenges that we face. If a person can come to me and say the DA does not deliver on its promises, then we can speak and say, no, maybe the DA is facing. In terms of people coming and going, I don't want to enter that debate. It's not my politics. My politics are about changing the lives of the people on the ground.
But do you not believe or think that the DA does have issues or problems that it still needs to confront to be able to deliver on the promise?
The biggest issue that we are going to confront, especially going into this month, is the fact that 9.2 million young people are unemployed. That's the only issue on my mind now. How do I restructure the DA youth to attract young South Africans, and how do we remove this government that is causing all these issues for us?
And how are you going to do that?
The first is by restructuring the branches. How do I create the DA as a home for young South Africans? I'm going to go back to the branches, empower branch leadership, to be able to empower constituency leadership. And secondly, is to use people like yourself, Putbuya, by attending these interviews and diminishing this narrative that the DA is a party for a certain type or certain kind of people, and actually prove that the DA is a party for all South Africans. Because I understand in politics, perception is important. And I will take what you've said, I'll write it on my notes and say, how do we change Putbuya from thinking what he is thinking, which is incorrect, to actually see us for who we really are, a party for all young South Africans?
Why do you think that narrative continues, though?
Again, Putbuya, that's if I knew, I would be very rich. It's something that we maybe as a party need to do more in marketing ourselves. But I will be going across the country to speak to young people, because my leadership style has always been a consultative leadership. I'm going to go to the ground, go door to door across the country, and actually listen to people to say, why do people have this misconception about the DA? Is it the media? Is it because we spent about 8 minutes debating Lindiwe and Race? So how do we change that so that we can take it out of people's mind, and actually people must see the good work that we do, which is changing people's lives? So we need to find a way that the work that we do in the Western Cape can be reflected throughout the country. And we will do that by working together with people like yourself, Putbuya. I hope I can be a regular here so that we change this narrative, and hopefully all of us vote for the DA, including yourself, Mkhulu.
But you don't think also you need to change the attitudes of some of your leaders? Because comments that people like Helen Zille often make, for example, aren't helpful to your image.
We're a liberal organization, we're always going to have different opinions. I think that's what makes us special.
Yeah, but being liberal doesn't mean you have to assault and insult black people, for example. You know, and you know, by insisting that their lives are better when they are not. In other words, better under the DA, when in reality that's not the case.
But I was there. I spoke to people. So it's, you know, there was a time I was SRC president. I was SRC president. People said, no, the DA is selling out for wanting to open universities. No? When they said this, it hurt me, because the people who were actually calling for the opening of universities were, at most times, black students who, number one, were doing their final year. They are the last hope of their families. They have NSFAS that they might lose if this fees must fall continues. We called for the opening of universities. And people, especially the media, called us sellouts because we don't understand the plight of students. Not understanding that there were those who were scared to speak because they knew that if you speak the truth, Abandu will crucify you. I'm not going to defend Helen. I don't think that's my job. She's a seasoned politician. She can defend herself. But personally, as a black person in the DA, I have never been assaulted by Helen. I have never been insulted by her. I'm not going to come here and say, no, Helen is insulting me. Well, that's not what our job is. Our job as politicians is to change the lives of individuals. So if to me you would have came to me and said, when Helen was a premier, she failed, then I would concede. But all of us, both of us here, South Africans watching, can agree that Helen was the best mayor in Cape Town. Helen was the best premier in the Western Cape. But now we must find loopholes there and there because she assaulted black people. If you are saying, argument's sake, what Nicholas is saying is wrong, take me to the Human Rights Commission. Take me there. If I am found guilty, then the party can act on me. I mean, people say, hey, I was reading Twitter comments, people are calling me Zimbabwean. Am I going to say, no, South Africans are insultive, Zulus are insultive, this one is insultive, just because they're calling me Zimbabwean?
Okay, that's where we're going to leave it. Thanks very much for your time and best of luck.
Thank you very much. When you're in PE, let's do coffee so that I can see how we work together.
Nicholas Nyati, the newly elected federal youth leader of the Democratic Alliance. And that's our program for this evening. To join us again tomorrow night, same time. Have a good night.